So this is the Stoic mindset, and I'm going to tell you about what it is, some examples from my life, and why it is so necessary. So what is the Stoic mindset? Basically, in 300 BCE, in Athens, Greece, a school of philosophy came up with the idea on how to cope with hardship. It is the philosophy that when you suffer through something, you don't have to let your emotions get to you. So an example from my life, something in school where my friend and I had this big test coming up in English class. And so what we did is we studied for several hours, we were on call a few nights beforehand, and it was to our belief, because the teacher had said this, but apparently it was for a different test, that we could use the book we were taking the test on during the exam. So the exam started, and we had both of our books out. Now what happened? Do you think our teacher walked up and goes, "Oh, no book on this test. I'm sorry. 20 questions in." No, she took the book. She was like super mad, and she gave us grace because she knew we weren't trying to cheat, but she intentionally took everything, and then we just had to sit there for a few minutes before she was like, "Oh, okay, they can start on this part of the test now." And my emotions essentially told me, this is an outrage, this is crazy, or this is so annoying, and I could have acted out or did something, but what I remember is I couldn't let my emotions control me. You have to use your emotions as a tool and still be in control. It's like emotions should be used as another set of data that you can say, why am I feeling this way? So in this example, it's because I cheated kind of on the test, even though I thought I was allowed to use the book. And so my emotions were outrage, injustice. And so what did I say, this is outrage, so I'm going to, cry or walk out of the room, storm out of the room, or yell at the teacher, even worse. But no, I said, all right, I'm feeling this way. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try my very best on this next section of the test. I'm going to talk to the teacher in the most convincing way possible and try my best to convey that the best thing which I can, which is that I was not intentionally trying to cheat. So why is it so necessary? At any point of our lives, we're going to go through hardship. Maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's the next hour, maybe it's next week, next month. We're going to go through something difficult. And the problem with our normal flight or fight way of thinking is that when you go through something, you tend to let your emotions take control and you don't think logically about things. But when that happens, your emotions are not necessarily to the benefit of you. Okay? And so what the Stoic mindset is it's thinking logically outside of those emotions, using those emotions as a tool, and then making the best decision possible. Logically, you can make the best decision possible, but when you're focused on emotions and you're not realizing them, then it's very difficult to do what is best for you. And so what this is not discouraging great acts of change. So for example, MLK, if he had the Stoic mindset, that doesn't necessarily mean he wouldn't have done what he would have done, or he wouldn't have done what he would have done, or what he did. And so what this isn't is discouraging great acts of change. So for example, MLK, he would not have been stopped if he had the Stoic mindset, which maybe you may be thinking. Because what he would have done is he would have had the emotion of, oh, this is an outrage, he wouldn't have necessarily acted on that emotion, and he didn't because he used civil nonviolent protest, civil disobedience, where he wouldn't fight anybody, he would just boycott, do sit-ins, marches, protests, rallies, and he was a great example of this because he did not let his emotions take control. He knew that change was possible, and he said, all right, my emotions tell me this is an outrage. Logically speaking, it's an outrage. So I'm going to do the best thing I can to change it, which is to drive out hate with love. And some further reading I'll recommend to you. This is one book that I've read, and it's a great book on the Stoic mindset. It's by Mark Tutor, I think his name is, and it's called The Stoic Mindset. It's just that. And in this book, he is an Olympic figure skater for the Netherlands. So if you're in the Netherlands, great book for you, I guess. And he had to sit out one Olympics. I'll spoil a little bit. He had to sit out one Olympics because he got sick. He was working too hard, and he got sick a few weeks before the Olympics. Couldn't make it. Had to wait another 4 years, and it's a very short book, easy read, and he talks about the Stoic mindset and how he used those principles which he discovered after he got sick and had to miss the Olympics. And so one other thing I'll add is the issue of politics. So politics are important. In America, I live in a democracy where your vote essentially doesn't really matter. Now, it's important to vote because if one person doesn't vote, it doesn't matter, but if that opinion is in the minds of hundreds of people or thousands of people, it can, shift the vote, which is pretty important. But one thing I see in high school is a lot of kids that just care all about politics, and they're so focused on politics. And I just think to myself, it's fun. I like politics as well. I like to debate, and it's interesting to have an opinion. But really, does having an opinion on if Trump should deport immigrants, is that really going to affect your life? I mean, your contribution there is going to make absolutely zero difference. And when I'm older, I'll get into politics, I'll learn things, I'll start to vote. But when you can't vote, or you're not going to be exactly focused on it, I'm just saying it's a waste of energy to a degree.